Good morning, everybody. It is currently July 29th. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, technically it is July 29th, going into July 30th. So, wanted to throw out a bit of an update here. About a week ago, I threw out an update explaining why I haven't been uploading lately. And I'm doing my best to correct that. It has been crazy. Just, I've been running hard. But good news, not yesterday, but the day before, I reached out to the finance company to see if there was an update regarding the monthly mileage average requirement. And I was notified that as of 2 days ago, I'm averaging just shy of 9,500 miles a month average. Which is great. Now, every purchase program is a little bit different, but for Crete Schaefer, they require an average of 9,100 miles a month. So, as of Monday, July 27th, I've been approved for the financing to move forward with purchasing a truck. I have a phone call out to the team that secures the trucks and deals with the routing to get me to a terminal to pick up a truck. I'm going to assume they're busy because they've only had a day to do stuff, and I haven't heard back from them. But what that means is that there's every possibility that by the end of this week or beginning of next week, I could be signing on a truck. I'm already approved for the financing. I've got my down payment. It's just a matter of them finding the truck and routing me to a terminal. Now, when it comes to buying a truck, and I've talked about this a little bit, it's not as simple as going down to your Ford dealership and buying a pickup or an SUV. A lot more to it. First and foremost, your credit rating is critical. You got to have good credit. You need to have an LLC set up in the least. You could go incorporated or corporated, but that's getting into semantics of business. It's not what I'm here for. Not yet. You have to have a business checking account. You've got to have a savings. There's a whole bunch of stuff behind getting into a truck before you actually start making money with the truck. This has been 8 years in the works, having tried several times. And every time I've tried, there's been something that held me up. But every time I tried after that, I got a little bit closer. This time I'm in. It's just a matter of securing the truck itself. Since this is a tutorial channel, I will go into some detail about the truck purchase. I'm going to be paying $660 a week for an accelerated payoff on a truck. It is a used retired fleet truck, and its sale price is based on the average used truck market for its age and average mileage. Right now, that's about $89,000 for a truck that has, give or take, 450,000 miles on it and is about 3 years old. Which isn't great, but with the truck market the way it is right now, it's not bad either. Now, I'm going to throw in a comparison on that. I've said in previous videos that I am doing a truck purchase, not a lease purchase program. I'm not going to get into the fine details of how Creek Carrier does things, because that is company proprietary information. It's not my place to give that out. But I am going to compare to another company that I'm familiar with, which is Prime Incorporated. So what I'm doing is getting financing from a third party and buying the truck, specifically a Creek Carrier fleet retired truck, as if I were buying through a dealership. Prime Incorporated does a lease purchase program. A couple weeks ago, I was at our terminal in Lenoir City. That's Lenoir City, Tennessee. I got to talking to a driver that had just come over from Prime, and had tried out their lease purchase program. So I started asking him some questions. I wanted to know some more details. Not that I'm interested in buying a truck from them, but because I wanted to do a comparison. So, for starters, Prime does lease purchase. They pay 30% of your week's gross income. Which isn't necessarily bad. I mean, it's an industry standard. It's not bad at all. As long as you're getting good rates and the load is actually worth pulling. So if you're doing industry standard 30%, that truck should be bringing home anywhere between $6,000 to $9,000 a week minimum. And what he was explaining to me is that when he was running hard, he was averaging about 7,000 a week gross. Out of that, he had a $1,400 a week truck payment. His insurance, a maintenance escrow, and all of the various other charges that go with owner operator. The key point was that truck payment. He was paying $1,200 to $1,400 a week for a retired used truck. 400 some odd thousand miles on it when he got it. Then comes the other clincher. It's a 4-year lease purchase. You get done with the lease purchase 4-year contract, and Prime doesn't allow you to buy that truck. You have to turn it in and sign a second lease purchase for another 4 years, and that's the truck you actually get to buy. So when you do the math, figure $2,000 a week for your truck payment if you got some niceties from Prime, okay? That's $8,000 a month. Well, even if you knock it back to $1,500 a week, going to $6,000 a month, that's about $72,000 a year for 4 years. So you spend 4 years on this lease, and you're not allowed to buy the first truck, and you're paying Prime $320 some odd $1,000. You just bought them 6 trucks. And then they force you to sign a second lease for 4 years, and that's the truck you actually get while you buy them another 6 trucks. It's that kind of thing that makes lease purchase such a scam. It's not about giving the driver the power to become successful as an owner operator. It's about using them as a money bank to further your own fleet. Now, I've heard this from a number of Prime drivers that run lease purchase. And I would challenge Prime Incorporated to answer this. And I'll make sure I tag them. Because if my information is wrong, understand that I've heard it from a number of current and former Prime Incorporated lease purchase operators. Prime, I think you need to answer. Werner Enterprises does something very similar. Now, Werner has 2 programs. They have their lease purchase program, and then they have a leasing program. I'm going to go into that a little bit here. Now, I don't have any current numbers for their lease purchase program, but when I was looking into it in 2018, 2017, somewhere in there, they were doing $1,200 a week for the truck payment, plus fuel and maintenance as well as insurance. But they were only paying 90 to 95 cents a mile. The failure rate for their program is atrocious. It was rare to hear about somebody actually paying their truck off. Not saying it didn't happen, but it was rare. More often, you'd hear about a truck being repossessed, somebody's credit being ruined, and any possibility of them being able to buy a truck for the next 10 years, gone. And then in 2019, give or take, Werner introduced this lease program. And it's just that. You have no ownership possibility of the truck, but you're paying maintenance and fuel for the truck and essentially renting it to act like an owner operator. And again, while you get a higher pay rate than company, still not paying the bills, still under $1 a mile last time I checked. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, here in the last 6 months, Werner has been stepping away from having their own drivers, and they've gone to this PowerLink program where they are contracting outside owner operators to come pull their freight. And they're reducing their company fleet drastically. It's predatory. Plain and simple, it's predatory. So, if you're in the market to buy a truck, the first thing I will tell you is that you need to have at least an LLC set up. That LLC needs to have at least a year of legal operation before you try doing anything. So you need to set it up and let it sit. It needs to be registered with the state for at least a year before you try anything. In that time, you need to have a savings account set up and a checking account specifically for that business. You can go to Wells Fargo, Chase, any number of major banks and set up a business account for your LLC. I would highly suggest that you have no less than $10,000 in a savings account and at least $10,000 in the checking account. Much better would be $25,000 in the savings account, at least $10,000 in a checking account before you even think about going to a dealership or looking at buying a truck. If you want to be even more prepared, $25,000 in each. Then when you go to look at buying a truck, stay away from lease purchase. I would highly suggest going to a dealership first and looking at their used trucks. You don't need to be buying new right off the rip. You need to have at least a 700 credit score, preferably higher. That'll get you in the door with about $1,000 to $1,200 a month truck payment for a $90,000 truck with 400 some odd thousand miles on the clock. You don't need to be worrying about anything fancy. So things like an APU, yes, that will absolutely save you fuel, but that's something you can add later on. I would highly suggest a truck that has an air dump rear suspension. That'll make dropping trailers a lot easier. And I would suggest a manual transmission. If you have an automatic restriction on your CDL, I'm sorry. But a manual transmission will go a lot further. It will save you a lot more money because the maintenance on it is a lot cheaper. I wouldn't look at any transmission that's less than 10 speed. 13 or 15 would be much preferable. If you've met all those qualifications, you should have no problem with a dealership. Now, in addition to that, you're going to have temporary license plate registration, as well as temporary insurance, just so you can get it off the lot. That's going to cost you anywhere between $200 and $500, depending on what you buy. From there, and you need to have all this set up before you do anything. I would highly suggest for at least the first 5 years, you'll be leased on with a good company. Landstar used to be pretty good. They're not as good as they used to be. I've heard good things about Mercer. Creek Carrier's a good one to get on with. I've heard good things about Swift. Stay away from Werner, stay away from CR England, stay away from Prime. Those are personal opinions. One of the big things I've heard about Prime is if you lease on with them, part of their contract is that you must put a governor on the truck that doesn't go any faster than 65 unless you've got the truck paid off. Once you get the truck paid off, they'll allow you to bump it up to 68. That's what I've heard. If you're buying the truck, no company should be dictating to you how fast your truck can go. Last time I checked, and it's been a few years, I will admit that. I've been away from Werner for 4 years. Last time I checked, they don't have a restriction on a governor when it comes to owner operator. But, as I said earlier, they don't pay for beans. I'd stay away from them. You're not going to be able to make your truck payment on 90 cents a mile. Not when you're paying maintenance, insurance, permits, fuel. 90 cents a mile doesn't cut it. They may have changed that, but the only way you'd know is by checking. I've heard good things about Schneider. And this is not me having talked to the companies themselves. I get all my information from the drivers. Now take it with a grain of salt, because you will run into drivers just have a bad taste in their mouth for whatever company. My rule of thumb is, if you're talking to a company, talk to at least 50 of their drivers that run their owner op side. You'll get the good, bad, and ugly on a pretty good average. Ask them about their average miles. Ask them about their average pay, gross pay. Ask them about their take home after permits, fuel, insurance, truck payment. Ask them if that company has any restrictions. Now, I don't know much about JB Hunt, but I've heard some good things about JB Hunt as well. I've tried for Mercer in the past. They didn't even respond to me. So I'm not sure if they've got something that filters out who they'll accept. But Mercer, from my understanding, is pretty difficult to get onto. Now, those are the big companies. And I'm pointing that direction because you have guaranteed freight. You're less likely to run into a scenario where they don't have freight and you wind up sitting. Remember, if your wheels aren't turning, you're not earning. Now, another company I've heard good things about is Tantera. Don't know much about them, but another company to look at. It also depends on what kind of freight you want to pull. All of the companies I've talked about are dry box, flatbed, or reefer. Those are pretty steady, not specialized. Now, if you want to get into some of the more specialized stuff, you got things like car hauling, which right now is not doing well. I've met a lot of car haulers that are struggling right now because there is no freight, period, end of story. And that's across the board. You also have hazmat, and you can do things like bulk liquid propane, or you could start getting into some more specialized stuff like air gas, where you're doing liquid nitrogen, liquid helium, anhydrous ammonia. But those all come with some very special restrictions that you need to look into. Hazmat endorsement being one of them. Another good one to look at is FedEx or UPS. I've heard a lot of good things about owner operators that lease their truck on with UPS or FedEx. Make pretty good money. Now, big point in all of this, money is important, but it should not be the end all. You also need to look at what benefits does that company provide? What kind of fuel discounts are you looking at? What about maintenance? What discounts do you get on parts? Shut off your high beams, Amazon. Good grief. Now, speaking of Amazon, yes, you see a lot of Amazon trucks on the road. But my understanding with them is, yeah, they've got the freight, hands down, but they don't pay. There's no money in it. I haven't really talked to any Amazon drivers, but I got a friend that just recently worked for Amazon through a third party contract, and the working conditions were terrible. So when you're buying a truck, just to wrap this up, first and foremost, get all your ducks in a row. Credit score, savings, LLC, business accounts. And figure out what kind of freight you want to pull. Once you localize on what kind of freight you want to pull, find a good company. If you're looking at dry box versus reefer, I'll tell you hands down, reefer pays better. Always has. Reefer is also more sustainable on overall freight because reefer is always in demand. Doesn't matter what the economy is, there is always something that needs to be hauled when it comes to refrigerated freight. Dry box, not so much. Flatbed, while it can be year round, is a very much seasonal job. Now, you do have other, even more specialized divisions within each of these lines of business. You have some companies like Skelton, which I don't know if they'll let you lease a truck on, but the only thing they haul is pharmaceuticals. You've got companies like Southern Aviation, where the only thing they haul is aerospace parts. There can be a lot of good money there. I'm not even going to touch on oversize because there's a lot of other specialized stuff there. But before you make a move, you need to have your savings, you need to have the credit score, you need to have your LLC, you need to decide what line of business you're going to work with, whether or not you're going to get specialized, and then you need to decide which company to go with and what goals do you need to meet in order to work for that company. There's a lot to it. Now, me personally, I started out my career in refrigerated. I enjoyed it when I started my career there at CR England. I didn't enjoy CR England, but I enjoyed the freight. I left CR England in 2015. I went and I worked for Werner pulling dry box for 5 years. And there were some enjoyable loads with running dry van, but I missed running reefer. I left Werner in 2020. Took a little bit of a sabbatical. Then I came over to Crete in 2021. I've been here, April of this year was 4 years. And I enjoy it here. This is not an advertisement for Crete Carrier or Schaefer Trucking. It's a reality of my experience. I enjoy it. From the safety department, dispatch, terminal managers, terminal staff, overall equipment maintenance, shop staff, everybody's friendly. You're not a number. You're treated well. And that's huge. Now, is that to say that I haven't had some issues over the years? No. I've had some issues. That's true of every company you work for. It's a fact of working with a company. There will be issues at some point. But every time I've had an issue, it's resolved, and it's resolved quickly. Might take a couple of phone calls, but it is resolved quickly. The other thing I got to say is owner operator isn't for everybody. It takes a special mindset to be an owner operator. There's some sacrifices in it, especially in the first 5 to 7 years. That first 5 to 7 years is critical. Now, if you've taken all the steps, you found a good solid truck that's in good working order, you take care of it, you're leased on with a good company that pays you well, success is basically guaranteed. Preventative maintenance is critical. You talk to any owner operator that clearly takes care of their truck, they will tell you, hands down, preventative maintenance is your number one best friend. Now, if you decide to stay company and let somebody else handle all the bills, the only thing you got to worry about is turning your miles or turning your loads if you're paid percentage, so be it. It's one of the things with this industry. The direction you go is ultimately your decision. Being an owner operator, you have a lot more freedom. That's just a simple fact. As long as you're a company driver, in a lot of ways, you're not allowed to set your own rules on some things. Now, there are just some things that nobody's got a decision in. Plain and simple. That comes down to federal regulations. But as an owner operator leased on with a company, you've got a lot more freedom about what loads you take, what loads you deny. Whereas the company guy, for the most part, just doesn't have a choice. There are a lot of companies, I'm going to pick on CR England and Werner here, where they're forced dispatch. You get what you get, you don't have a choice. Period. Doesn't matter how you feel, doesn't matter what the schedule is, doesn't matter how long or how short that load is, doesn't matter how much bullshit's attached to that load, you're going to pull it. Period. And your only out is legal justification, such as you legitimately do not have the hours of service to run that load. Whereas the owner operator is given the option and he can tell the company to shove it. They can't do anything about it. I will be going into a lot of this in a lot more detail in future videos. But this is part of why I'm so adamant about pre-trip. Your first step in preventative maintenance is a thorough pre-trip. Catch the problems before they're a problem, and you won't have any problems. Or if you do, they're very rare. If you're a company driver, take care of that truck as if you were paying for it. You'll come out on the other end a lot better. When I sign on a truck and I turn this truck in and I move on to being an owner operator and buying my own truck, I can clean this truck out, look back at it with pride, and say, whoever's going to pull this truck for the next 2 years will have a solid truck with no issues. Because I've taken care of it. I keep it clean to the best of my ability. When I do my pre-trips, if I see a problem, I get it taken care of right there. And that's part of why this truck has 343,000 miles on it. And it's hardly ever been in the shop for anything. And when it has been in the shop, it's minor. Think of the 3.5 years I've had this truck, I've only had one moderately major issue, and that turned out to be tires and an alignment. Taking care of your truck, even if your company, goes a long way. Another aspect with that, and I'll wrap this up. When you hire onto a company, don't expect to get a brand new truck out the gate. Werner Enterprises does that a lot, and they wind up with a lot of damaged trucks. Industry tradition is that you will get the older truck and you have to take care of it. And in 6 months to a year, you'll get a new truck. Or you might get a new to you truck. Depends on how you take care of it. If you get a new truck, great. You're getting a truck that is coming off the piggyback, or coming off the lot, and there shouldn't be anything wrong with it. But understand that you're going to have that truck for the next 3.5 years, average. Take care of it. When it comes time to turn it in, you're much more likely having your pick of the next truck that you get. Make, model, color. If the company sees that you take care of their equipment, they're more likely to give you some niceties as a thank you. If, on the other hand, they see that you never clean the inside, you always have mechanical problems because you're not keeping the fifth wheel greased or you're not taking care of problems, less likely to give you any leeway. I've been rambling on now for a bit. I covered all the points I wanted to cover. I'm going to focus on putting some miles down. In the meantime, drive safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.